OST, where today we will continue to recap the seasons of the 11 Canadian professional men's side from coast to coast. And our destination today for these next 15 minutes is the incredible city of Winnipeg, Manitoba. That is a place that's out home of Valour FC. That's true. Factually, Oliver's favorite city in the country. When the dust settled after the outcome, I think a lot of people might have been surprised, and yet maybe not that surprised to see Valour holding the wooden spoon again, because everyone understood the trials and tribulations from the campaign. New turf being laid down at IG Field, or I beg your pardon, Princess Auto Stadium. And that required a very long road trip to start the year with a very new roster constructed by Phil Dos Santos. Once they had that homestand, though, they were playing some really good football, being competitive, fighting in every single match. And there was that little twinkle of belief that they were going to crack into the top 5, but 8th after 28 matches again must be a bitter pill to swallow for the Winnipeggers. Jordan Wilson, is that 8th place finish in the table fairly representative of the season, or do you think maybe it doesn't quite show everything that happened this year?
No, it doesn't quite show, right? It's hard done. They're hard done by a little bit. When you're going into the last game of the season and there are 3 teams that could potentially still make playoffs, you know that it's coming down to the wire for them. I will say that the first quarter of the season for them was like as bad as it could be, right? In terms of not their play on the pitch, but just the results and just being on the road. Like you didn't get any type of consistency going back to Princess Auto Stadium and playing in front of your fans or in front of your comfort. Just the feeling of leaving your apartment and then going to the stadium and playing is different than always being on the road and because people think it's just a road match. It's not. It's training at other people's stadiums. It's different meals. Like all these percentages consecutively add up, and it's very detrimental to a squad. But there was a lot to like about Valour this season, like the way they played, their coach, the players that they brought in, the fact that they had 2 top goal scorers tied at 7. There was a lot to like. You got players that were maybe also 2 redemption players, have played in the CPL but have come back and maybe found their fit. You like that Phil Dos Santos brought players that he could believe in and fight, and you saw that. It just wasn't enough over the stretch. So that's something we'll dissect in the next little bit. But finishing 8th was really tough for the side because I felt like they deserved a little bit more.
Ollie, let me set you up this way because I'm curious if you'll take the opposite opinion, and if not, maybe I'll try to defend it myself. I agree in large part with what Jordan's saying, but at the end of the day, this was year 6. It's another year at the bottom of the table. It's another year out of the playoffs. So you can say that there's a lot of good improvements or a lot of things you like, but ultimately it's the same old, same old. And as a few coaches in this league and across the world like to say, the table doesn't lie.
No, I think I'm kind of with you. I think 8th place is a little bit harsh in the sense that I don't think there was a massive difference between the 8th place team and the 5th place team in this league this year. But the reality was Valour finished with 28 points. They didn't hit 30 for the second season in a row. And there's no hiding from that, right? Like that's independent of what the other teams did. That's not good enough. So I think the one thing you can say that's like gives you optimism going into next season is there is a big difference between this offseason and the last one, in that Valour made more changes to their roster last winter than any other team in the league, and we saw what it did to them in the early part of the season with that massive road trip. It was a nightmare. That shouldn't be the case this year. They only have a small number of players under contract right now, but they have options on almost everyone who is important to them this season. So there is the opportunity there to have much more continuity and consistency from this year to next year compared to last year to this one. And that makes you optimistic that maybe the team we saw in the second half of the season can be carried through to 2025.
I will apologize to Phil Dos Santos and the Valour FC players because we did match night right at the end. And I remember saying that in 2024, they got 28 points. And you know how many they got in 2023? It was 26. And I made a comment that the stats don't lie. Like, it's really the same, right? Poor timing, because you just obviously are licking your wounds, and Phil Dos Santos got a red card and left the game early. But my sentiment is that they're still right there, right? With this team that they have, and to Ollie's point, what they assembled, they should be breaking the 30. They should be flirting with a higher part of the season. They should be at 4th or
37 5th. In 2022.
Yep. You know what I mean? Like they have to play at that range as opposed to playing in 7th and 8th and waiting for luck to happen for them to be 5th. Like, get in that 4th place spot and play around there. And then fortune might favor you a little bit more. So that's kind of what I meant with the season being a little bit too identical to the points last year.
Yeah, and like it's math that I can even do. 28 points divided by 28 matches is 1 point a game or a draw. That's really difficult to sell to your supporters year in and year out. And they have incredible fans, and the players recognize that, the coaches recognize that. And of course, they all want more. But bottom line, disappointing way to end despite all the circumstances. This is a professional club that's about winning. And I'm not trying to be all doom and gloom, because I actually thought they had a good enough team to make the playoffs. And I think if Phil Dos Santos stays and builds this roster the way he wants to, and they get a bit more breaks, they might be in that conversation again to go on and surprise some people, especially with some of the newcomers that they brought in. And that's where I'd like to head next. When you consider the Themi Antonoglu's, the Jordi Swivel, the Diogo Resurreçãos, and their impact of this year, I'm going to do something unfair, but it's fine because I don't have to do it. I'm just going to ask Jordan and Ollie to do it. And that is rank those 3 newcomers by their impact to the team. And because Ollie made a fun sound, he's going to go first.
Okay.
Tag me at any time, Ollie.
I will. Antonoglu is number 1. I don't think, is anyone going to argue with that?
No.
Can't argue.
So 2 and 3 is really the question. I'll go Swivel for the goals he scored as number 2, even though both of them kind of fell out of the team a little bit by the end of the year. But I wouldn't be surprised if Resurreçãos, if he is retained, rises up that list, because I think he is a very good player.
Jordan?
Yeah, so Temi's got the number 1 spot. I'm going to say, what was it? There's a Hondo and Resurreçãos. I almost want to put someone else.
Swivel and Resurreçãos.
Like, we're skipping past Hondo?
Yeah,
I want to throw
Hondo
him in
became
there.
the main man.
But okay. So I'll say Swivel just because of 7 goals. It's hard to do, and everyone always gets at me about my predictions. And when I say 7 or 8 goals is a successful season, I just know how hard it is to score in the CPL and being on the road as well. But I will inch the 9 over the 10. I thought Diego Resurreçãos was great throughout the season, a great acquisition. But I thought he struggled in big moments, because I think that when you're that type of player and you're so technical, you have to just have product. You have to have an assist. You have to have a goal. So those goal contributions weren't as great as maybe his potential could be. But this is also first season, so I'm always going to give someone slack to get them acclimated. But yeah, my list would be the same as Ollie in that order.
I think you give a little bit of extra love to Diogo Resurreçãos because Kean Williams was absent for the year, and I feel like Valour supporters and we in the media were robbed of that partnership together. However, Jordan, you always talk about this all the time. You want players that are going to give you like a consistent 6, 7, 8, and that was Jordi Swivel to me over Resurreçãos, who was at times a 9 or a 10, but there were also a fair few number of matches where he was maybe a 2 or a 3 and a lot more invisible. For that solidity, for that continuity and that consistency, that's a lot of adjectives. I don't know why I just did that, but alas, that's why I'm going Swivel number 2. So we head to 2025 then, and it is where the coaches all pull their hair out. Fortunately, if you start bald, you have very little to pull out. But for Phil Dos Santos and this group, as they begin to look ahead to 2025, you say, okay, what do we like? Who can we keep? Who can we go get? What would you say, Jordan, is their number 1 priority heading into next year?
I think in that midfield, I will say that you like their center backs, Mercurius, Facineri. Of course, you could add another
good tandem.
But it was a tandem that worked as well. So forget, like, sometimes you could have 4 center backs, but there's no chemistry with either one of them, or any, like, whatever you try to pair them with. But it worked with them. A little bit of a mature player with a young and eager one. Loved it. I think in the middle, you had Dante Campbell. I rate this player highly. Had to play the right back, had to play left back, had to play center back. Why I say getting another midfielder in there? Because I think he needs a partner. I think he's starved from the things that he likes to do, being able to defend. And I know this firsthand. You ask me to go and play a game or play a season and contribute goals from the midfield, I'm going to say, brother, I'll cut my salary. You bring someone else in that can go a bit offensive. No, true, because that's what a team is everyone has their distinct roles. If you can play those roles to the best of your ability, you have the best chance of winning. That's what it is. You ask someone to go in the midfield and go wide and whatever. Who else holds down the fort? Sanchez had a good year. I just think you need a bigger presence because that's what the midfield is. It's about presence. It's saying, give me the ball even when I've lost it. And if they can get more pieces there, retain a Handel or Swivel or whatever it looks like, having a few attacking pieces, yeah, they could compete. I'm not going to call them contenders, but they could compete for the 28 game season that the CPL is and make a push in playoffs.
Oliver Platt.
I'm going to go at the back, actually, because I do like the Mordecutis and Fashionary partnership, and I think Fashionary is a player that you absolutely bring back and invest in and hope that you can have that kind of McNaughton-type trajectory of becoming one of the better centre-backs in the league. But they did concede too many goals last season, didn't keep enough clean sheets. There was a lot of games, particularly in tight games, where they got ahead, couldn't hold on. So I do think you need another player there and more competition there. Chansopoulos this year just didn't really work out. He's gone. So I'll say the defense. I think that would be the first area to address for me.
Only thing to add for me, and I know it's something that every club needs: depth. Let Dante Campbell be a midfielder. Don't have him be a midfielder, then a right back, then a center back. It's one thing to have a great player, and it's not just Dante on the team as well, but when you let players do their job, like Jordan says, but know that if there are the inevitable bumps and bruises along the way, like, let's be honest, Valour's team was down to like 14 guys by the end of the season, and that's a lot to ask in a playoff push. They just need a little bit more across the park, and they'll be A-okay, if you ask me. And now the uncomfortable question to ask, because we get to know these people, we get to develop some relationships. He may or may not have offered a steak dinner for Ollie and I when we went out to visit Winnipeg that I didn't get to indulge in. I'm not going to ask Ollie a question about it if he even went, but Phil Dos Santos, because of course it's a manager, quite literally a general manager and a head coach who you think has the respect of all of us, at least at One Soccer, and many in the game, but results are results, and the table again doesn't lie. Ollie, would you say his job is in jeopardy?
I don't know, because I don't really know who's making that decision right now. And I think it would be probably just as relevant to ask, does he want to carry on? I think there's, part of him that does and believes, for some of the reasons we said that the next season could be a positive one for them, but he's also been there a while now and it's not been easy. So there's a lot of things I think there to consider on a club level that, kind of go above just the manager on his own. It is interesting that you've started to see, York United, for example, have appointed a new coach. They're starting to activate options and extend contracts. Valour, it's very quiet, right? It's just the guys who are already under contract who have been confirmed, and everyone else we're still waiting to hear on. Kind of suggests maybe that there's some discussions going on about what the future is going to hold and the direction of this club. So,
Jordan, unless you have a scoop, and I'd love to hear it if you do, maybe the question could also be, should his job be in jeopardy, or do you expect it to be in jeopardy?
I mean, expect, yes, because it's a results-based industry. Like, you can't go and finish 7th or 8th or have one of the worst records in CPL history for the past 2 seasons and not be a bit nervous about your job. But then on the flip side, and yes, I like Phil, so maybe there's a bit of bias there. But on the flip side of it, I think in this league particularly, you need someone who could motivate men, who could get them to go and buy into something. It's not easy playing in Winnipeg. I know that's Ollie's favorite city in Canada, but it's not easy going there and playing and living if you're coming from the East Coast or you're coming from wherever you are. If you're not from there, it's difficult to go there and try to be acclimated and make that place home. But like Phil has, and I think you have to be very careful with managers coming in if they can go and do the same thing. So, yeah, I mean, that's my diplomatic answer, but
yeah, we'll just have to wait and see on that one. It's a big question heading into the off season. An OST special on Valour FC. Thanks for joining.